Hey, I don't want to be more efficient. I don't want to be a self-sustaining nonprofit. At the end of the day, I want to have a very robust discussion in America about why it is that a program in Washington, D.C. has to pull up in the back of the Mayflower Hotel and pick up leftover food to feed working poor people in America. I don't like it, and I'm not going to sit still. 51% of my time will always be devoted to what next. Why do we do the things we do? Who says we can't do anything different? That's where I'm coming from. That's where this article germinated. It was also reinforced by about 114 different town hall meetings that were held last year before the Nonprofit Congress. Meeting with rank-and-file nonprofits that really make up 85% of the sector. Mom and pop stores out there, most of them under $750,000 a year, just trying to make payroll, just trying to do something good in their community, and they see no end in sight. And they're looking for some new alternative, something that gets them out of this trap. We've all fallen in, and not just us, the people we serve, the foundation world, we're all trapped in this charity model. So what I've tried to do, and what I'm pleased to see, is get a discussion going about what next. Again, when I first started the kitchen, people said you can't do it. The laws prohibit it. The rules don't allow it. All we did was say, okay, well, let's change those rules. Let's challenge those assumptions that homeless men and women can't be trained for work, that somehow it's illegal for restaurants and hotels to donate food. And we went out and we got laws changed. We didn't just stop and say, well, here's the laws as they exist. Let's try and work within the confines. It's like, no, let's push it and get new laws. I mean, again, thanks to the work of the D.C. Central Kitchen, God bless America, a schmo like me went to the back of the Rose Garden and watched Bill Clinton sign a national law that protected, shielded all nonprofits, all donors of food from liability, because we pushed to get a new law. That's what I'm saying. To a certain extent, we're held hostage, and we assume that the laws that we inherited are the only laws. I look at the nonprofit sector, and I got to be honest, to paraphrase my friend, PABLO EISENBERG. I've met the future, and it's us. We're the future of this country. We're 1/10 of the economy in America. And oftentimes terms like 1/10 kind of roll off. But what that represents the gross national product of India. I've said this for the past 2 years, but if we were a country, we'd be the 7th biggest economy on the planet, the nonprofit sector in America. Yet in the smallest town, we don't have a say in the budget process. We pace outside City Hall, waiting to see what gets cut, and then render our clothes and bark at the moon and think that's all we can do. Now, I got to tell you, everyone knows this. There are laws that allow us to be actively involved, and we should utilize every single one of those laws to the maximum potential we have. And I'm in the middle of that in New Hampshire with the primary project, which I'll be happy to talk about later on. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, it feels to me a little bit like telling women in America that if you just keep playing by the rules, someday you'll make as much as men. That's what we're hearing. Sure, we can play by the rules. Sure, we can use the laws. But at the end of the day, I question openly whether those laws were designed by people to keep us right where we're at. And I question those laws. I don't like where I'm at. I'm not going to sit still. And I'm going to work every single day with my brothers and sisters in this sector to start to come together and find a unified voice that starts to get us at the table. I'm sympathetic to a certain extent with the conundrum all nonprofits face. With the reality is, if we stand up and talk to the public openly, that we can't charity our way out of these problems. And I have to admit, I know when I talk primarily from my perspective as a direct service, human service provider. And I know the nonprofit is much bigger than this. But for us to actually confront the public and say, in effect, you can give your leftover money at the end of the year. You can give your leftover food and your leftover clothes and, quite frankly, your leftover time. And that's cool. That's great. That has been the backbone of American charity, and it's what defines us. But that's not going to ever solve the problem. It's a great thing. It's what makes us, frankly, American. It's a great expression of who we are as a people. But it's never going to solve the problem. Individually, it's very difficult for nonprofits to confront the public with that reality. We're afraid that if we're that honest, they will give their money to someone else. And we're stuck in that trap. The Congress was designed to start to get a collective voice so that we wouldn't be taking the risk individually, that we'd be starting to stand together. And again, recognize, if you put nonprofit, people who work at a nonprofit, people who serve on boards, and volunteers who come to nonprofits on an annual basis, we're talking 100 million people in America do this. You know, this is a profoundly big thing. We are so far beyond the charities of the 1950s. We represent a major part of the economy in this country. You know, in many small towns, we represent a major economic stimulator. You know, we're not just good deeds over here. We're a major part of America now. And we shouldn't sit back and hope, again, as I say over and over, hope that laws are passed, hope that policies are forwarded, hope that people get elected to benefit or to do business with us. I don't want to sit idly by and watch government and business continue this arc in America. I think we have to be actively involved at every level. But you bring up an accurate point. Do you realize in Washington, D.C., there's 25,000 nonprofits in Washington, D.C.? You know, we're looking at, this is international, local, national groups. You know, we're the epicenter of nonprofit leadership, nonprofit numbers. We are probably the second biggest employer in this town, quite frankly. You know, and the Washington Post has a whole page dedicated to food, a whole section dedicated to food and restaurants. They got writers galore dedicated to covering movies. They got no one dedicated, nor do we have a page dedicated to in-depth analysis of what we do.